What is channeling? Who am I? This question has been asked by spiritual seekers for thousands of years. There have been many spiritual teachers who have come and gone and tried to provide guidance and direction for these seekers. Unfortunately, in the modern era, too few are seeking to explore the answer to this question. But those who are take an important step towards self-actualization. Traditionally, we've been presented with two main perspectives on this question: the one that comes from organized religion and the one that comes from contemporary science, which is just another religion in my opinion. It is interesting to note that the word religion comes from the Latin word religare, which means to bind or hold back. Either way, the question of who we are and the answer to that question is usually given to us from an external source. We are not encouraged to look within, even though the famous Oracle of Delphi proclaimed, "Know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods." The modern answer to the "Who am I?" question is that you are a meaningless accident. Contemporary science presents a view of reality as one of a universe that is totally material and governed only by fixed physical laws and blind chance. It was all one big accident, and there's no inherent meaning to it, and no spiritual side to existence. We are just a meaningless mixture of chemicals, according to this viewpoint. On the other hand, the focus of the religious view is upon belief. We are told a story about how we and the world came into existence and told to believe it and not question or ponder it. The problem is, in the real world, so-called psychic phenomena occur, which do not fit into this materialistic view. One of these is the phenomenon called channeling. Channeling is predicated upon the knowledge that we are far more than our physical bodies, and that we live in a universe filled with other, more spiritual intelligences. And if these intelligences exist, we can communicate with them. Channeling is a process by which the channel or person acts as a conduit or medium or channel for information from these intelligences. The intelligences usually purport to be from another dimension or level of reality, often claiming to be more highly evolved than we on Earth are, and the information they bring is for the purposes of personal and planetary growth. An important book on this topic has been written by Dr. John Climo, who is a parapsychologist. He defines channeling as the communication of information to or through a physically embodied human being from a source that is said to exist on some other level or dimension of reality than the physical as we know it, and that is not from the normal mind or self of the channel. In his book, he presents the study of channeling as part of a spectrum that includes not only spirits of the deceased, alien disembodied intelligences, the higher self, and the universal mind, but also the more familiar concepts of intuition and creativity. Another researcher in this area is Arthur Hastings, former president of the California Institute of Transpersonal Psychology in Palo Alto, California. He defines channeling as the process in which a person transmits messages from a presumed discarnate source external to his or her consciousness. Yet another definition of trance channeling, from a researcher named William Kautz, who worked with channels at his Center for Applied Intuition in San Francisco, is one form or aspect of mediumship that is a mental process in which an individual, the channel, partially or totally sets aside waking consciousness to allow knowledge that lies beyond conscious awareness to flow into the mind. Researcher Margot Chandley wrote her doctoral dissertation on contemporary channels, defining channeling as the method of transmitting information through a telepathic system of communication. The notion of telepathy is one that involves disembodied beings as information sources communicating to embodied beings. Most, if not all, of the earthly prophets of the world received information in this way for the religions, and they wrote it down. Channeling, like mysticism, is something that has been part of the human experience for thousands of years. According to parapsychologist Dr. Scott Rogo, mediumship is the art of bringing through spirits of the dead specifically to communicate with their relatives. Channeling is bringing through some sort of intelligence, the nature undefined, whose purpose is to promote spiritual teachings and philosophical discussion. To summarize, the universe is really a hierarchy of inhabited dimensions, only one of which is physical as we know it. There are other beings that are far more evolved than human beings that exist in this hierarchy. There are different techniques employed by channels to receive information. For example, there's something called full trance channeling, which is different from conscious channeling. I myself do conscious channeling and automatic writing. In addition, there are 4 interrelated concepts that must also be defined in order to be able to understand the phenomenon of channeling, and these are entities, planes, states, and stages, and these will be covered in another video. So now for the distinction between conscious channeling and trance channeling. Conscious channeling is done while the channel is fully aware of what is happening, including being able to stop the experience at any time. This is sometimes referred to as voice channeling, and the channeler usually can remember what is said to varying degrees. Often conscious channels will say that they hear themselves speaking as if they were at a distance or as if they were listening from another room. When told about what was said, they often feel as if they are remembering a dream. There are many people currently alive on the earth plane who consciously channel. For example, Esther Hicks brings through a group of entities that refer to themselves as Abraham, and this is no relation to the Abraham of the Old Testament, and they speak about the law of attraction. I myself, when I do conscious channeling, when I'm doing a reading for somebody and I'm channeling, I could be bringing through the spirit of a loved one, or I could be bringing through a disembodied, discarnate being's intelligence, or some kind of higher form of being that exists in another dimension. And when people question about this, I always tell them, well, before microscopes were invented, if you would have told the people back then that there was a whole nother realm that existed of life, but they just couldn't see it, they would have probably thought you were crazy if you had told them that. However, now we have microscopes and we know there is in fact a whole other dimension that we cannot see with the naked eye. So conscious channeling is kind of like that, bringing through beings that exist in another dimension, another reality, or another density. And I do automatic writing. So that means that I put myself in a trance state, a light trance state, and I pick up a pen and I wait. First, I surround myself, of course, with protective white light, and I have a group of beings that I work with that protect me, because it's not something you want to mess around with. You can bring through dark entities if you're not prepared, if you are not psychically clean, if you will. And so I protect myself first, and then I go ahead and clear my mind and make contact, and then wait for the thoughts to download into my mind, which they do telepathically, and then I write them on paper. Usually I write very, very fast. I did one for somebody a couple days ago. It probably was 10 pages worth of information, and I'm busy writing and I'm not consciously thinking about any of it. And so I remember very, very little. Sometimes a feeling or a phrase or something will come through, but usually I'm completely unaware. And people will tell me from years ago that I did readings for remember this and remember that, and I don't remember because I don't remember what I'm writing down. The other form of channeling is called trance channeling, and that's channeling that's done while in a very deep trance state. This arguably, probably one of the most famous trance channelers was Edgar Cayce, and he was referred to as the sleeping prophet because he only channeled when he was in a deep trance state. And that meant that he lost all muscle tone and he had to be lying down. He was unable to remember what he said, which meant that his secretary had to be present to take dictation and then transcribe the notes from the channeling session. And the best example that I know of trance channeling is a series of books that is called The Law of One. And this was channeled back in the 1980s by a woman by the name of Carla. Actually, there were 2 men and 1 woman, Carla Rickert, and they brought through over something like 106 sessions a group of beings from 6th density awareness that called themselves the Ra group. And they gave, through Carla, they gave information about the Law of One and what it is like in 6th density. And you can look up the L&L research website and you can listen to all the actual channelings that were done. And you'll notice that Carla they speak very, very, very slowly through Carla. They call her the instrument. And she, of course, has absolutely no awareness of what she's saying. And they tape recorded the sessions. This was back in the early 80s. And they are now in a series of books called The Law of One. So if you're interested in trance channeling, it's a fascinating read. And what these beings have to say about life on Earth and where we came from and where we're probably going if Earth ever does actually graduate into 4th density, which would be the next density after 3rd density, which is what we're in now. It makes for amazing reading. So that's all for now. I will see you next time.